talk about OCD today. And I had OCD about planning this talk. Guys, it was hard. I've been obsessing over it for like 2 weeks, so it's a good exercise. So if I tell you I have OCD, what do you picture me doing? Like, you don't have to shout it out, but just think, like, what do you imagine about OCD? Like Monk from the TV show? Does anyone think of that? Raise your hand. Did you think Monk? Yeah, okay, cool. Like obsessively organizing, cleaning, alphabetizing, washing hands. Oh, I don't have to hold this. Washing hands. Okay, yeah. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay, so that's what you think of. So my whole life, I thought of OCD this way, and so I never considered that, I always thought of OCD as very outward, an outward manifestation of some obsession, right? I never considered that my brain was actually hardwired for obsession because I didn't do any of those things. I'm like the least cleanly person, and that's not true at all. You're supposed to laugh. So I'm fine. I'm clean. So I never considered that I would be hardwired for obsession. And really, my purpose of the talk today is to talk through how I discovered that I struggle with OCD, and really my journey to overcoming it, to being successful at it. One of the main insights, most of the insights that I gained came from a book called Brain Lock, so that's what I named the title of this talk. Okay, my goal today is to normalize it, to normalize obsessions or compulsions that you might have, or that you know, anyone that you know. I want to normalize that. I also want to offer 6 mantras that have helped me in my life, and this applies to OCD, but also just generalized anxiety. Just feeling bad. If you feel bad sometimes in your brain or in your heart, these mantras help. And lastly, I want to share, that should say R's. I want to share the 4 R's of unlocking your brain, which is, get it? Brain lock, unlock. So, what want to talk about. So to start, I want to talk about when I discovered that I have a very powerful brain. It was 9 years ago. I was a freshman at BYU, and I was dating a boy, and I really liked him, like a lot. Like, I'd say that I eventually became obsessed with him. And like, I really, really liked him. He was awesome. He was kind and fun, and we had a great time. Who's been there? The obsession, the good kind. Like, I stay up all night thinking about you. You're so awesome. Anyone? Anyone? I know you've all done it. So, so this is how I felt. The problem was, the more obsessed I became on the happy end, the more potential I had to become obsessed on the negative end. I started to notice like changes in his demeanor, right? Like normal non-honeymoon stage demeanor. Like he didn't call me back like an hour after I called. And, like he didn't text me back like 5 seconds later. And he had plans on Friday night. Things like that. Things that started to create anxiety. And I had a ton of anxiety. Oh, these are all the questions I asked him. Get it? Okay, I had a lot of anxiety, tons of anxiety about whether he was going to break up with me. I bet, has anyone felt this? Has anyone been worried about that? Me too. So, the more obsessed I became, the more I acted compulsively. Can you guess what I did? I became more obsessed, but in the negative way. So I asked him all the time, like, how are we doing? Are you okay? Like, why didn't you call me back? Like, why are we going out on Friday? Like, do you love me? I thought you did. So, and the more I did that, you can guess what happened, right? He broke up with me. And it was like really sad. It destroyed me. And what happened after the breakup, though, was that it really lit my brain on fire as far as obsessions, right? It was almost like every obsessional thought I ever had were like logs building in my brain, and the breakup just like lit it on fire. And I was just like incapacitated. And this was my freshman year at BYU, so I'm in school, I'm in a ward, I'm in calling, I'm trying to do good, and I am totally debilitated, like trying to juggle all these things. And the thing about the fire is that it spreads to every aspect of my life. Like I thought I was just going through breakup. Who's had breakup brain? It's the worst. Oh, why did I do that? I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. Well, once I had breakup brain, but then I also started obsessing in every aspect of my life. I was sitting in church, and I had the thought, wait, like, what about that one time I like hit my sister, or that one time I kissed that boy too much, or like that one time that I like lied to my mom, or that one time that I cheated on a test? All of like my mistakes and my sins came crashing down, and all of a sudden I didn't feel like I was worthy to take the sacrament. And I met with the bishop like 3 times a week trying to divulge compulsively all of my mistakes, right? So I had become obsessed in my spiritual life. This happened in my academic life. I was at school and I was sitting in class, and I realized I get get lots of A's, but do I really deserve A's? I mean, like, am I really that, like, I don't even pay attention most of the time. I'm like on my computer. So then, you know what I did? I emailed all my professors and told them I didn't deserve my grades, and like told them why, and people started getting involved with how I was doing. My best friend's mom told me, she's like, I think you have OCD, and I think you have anxiety, and that was the best day. Do I have something else? No. That was the best day, because someone put a name to how I was feeling, and if there was a name for how I was feeling, then that means that there's probably a solution, like written in book somewhere, and that meant that I could feel better. And I adopted this mantra, I believe I can feel better. And I didn't think I would get emotional. Like, I think that the things that we struggle with, like, they have names, and there's like action plans written for them, and you can feel better. So I adopted this first mantra. So I go to counseling, and I learned some things, and I'm gonna share some things I learned with you. And really my goal isn't like, maybe some of you are like, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with things. That's fine, but most of you will think, I know someone who feels that way, or maybe some of you will think, I felt that way before, maybe once in a while, and I hope some of these things will be useful to you. The first thing I learned is what those things are called. They're called intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts, urges, or impulses. The urges are more like, I need to say sorry to everyone I've ever met for anything that I might have unkindly said, which, by the way, is a long list that I might have accidentally done, and I may have gone down that list a few times. So, back to girls' camp. I mean, you should not leave anyone out at girls' camp. Like, include everyone, you know? And so, I learned that they're intrusive thoughts, urges, and impulsive. And I had a point that I really wanted to make on this. Don't worry. Okay, we all experience this. I want to give you an example. Okay, we all experience intrusive thoughts. Have you ever been laying in your bed at night and thought, did I lock the door? Yeah. And then you're like, all of a sudden your brain starts rattling. You're like, wait, but if I didn't unlock the door, someone could break in and steal all my stuff, or steal my roommate, or like, it's like, and you get afraid, so you get up, and you check the door and you go back to bed, you're like, it worked, like I'm fine, right? Have you ever been laying in your bed, this is for my roommate, and thought, are there spiders on my ceiling? Are there spiders on my ceiling? And you turn the light and you're like, there's no spiders on my ceiling, and you go back to bed and it's fine. What about, you're at work and you think, did I leave the stove on? Did I leave my curling iron on? And it creates fear, right? Because those are scary thoughts. If those are true, what could happen, right? So you know what intrusive thoughts are. Everyone does. Well, these are some common intrusive thoughts that people have, you and I, but particularly people who struggle with OCD. So, concerns about contamination, harm to yourself or others. The ones that are bolded are the ones I was experiencing, right? Excessive concern about morality. Am I worthy? Am I a good girl? Am I a bad girl? Like, what am I? How do I repent? Excessive doubt about relationship security. That's called ROCD, relationship OCD. I think we've all been there. So, all these thoughts, images, and urges, they create anxiety. So what do you want to do? I'll come back to that. What do you want to do? You want to act in such a way to relieve the anxiety. These are some common compulsions. If someone is worried about, if they're having thoughts about something being dirty, what do? They clean a lot. What about if they have thoughts that things are out of order and that makes them feel uncomfortable? So they organize. Safety is like the checking doors, checking locks, and morality. So I would pray a lot and I would confess a lot to everyone all the time. And with relationships, you seek excessive reassurance. The thing that killed my freshman relationship, and a couple others, but like not anymore. So it takes a couple rounds to figure it out, you know. That's why I'm not married. Anyway, so I want to show you what an OCD brain and a normal brain looks like. So in a normal brain, well, you know I said that my brain lit on fire? PET scans show that. So this is a normal brain, and this is an obsessive compulsive brain. This is energy. When someone's experiencing an obsessive compulsive like brainwave, it looks like this. It's literally on fire. Let me explain what's happening. This is so cool. Jeffrey Schwartz in Brain Lock explained an analogy that really helped me in my life. He said the caudate nucleus and the putamen in your brain, they're like close together, and they are the main signal processing unit of your brain. The caudate nucleus sends a message. It's the thinking transmission. It's like ding, thought, and the putamen is the like movement. Like I'm gonna make a decision, and it says do, right? But the problem is in an OCD brain or with someone with chemical imbalances, the caudate nucleus won't shift. It like won't gear shift. So that thought stays there, even though they went and checked the lock. So the thought comes in, you should check the lock. Okay, shift, it's supposed to shift, it doesn't shift. Goes and checks the locks, come back, laying there, same thought. Again, have you checked the lock? Is the door unlocked? And they're like, they know it's irrational. Like, I know it's irrational to say sorry to everyone I've ever met, right? I know that. But since it's not shifting, my brain's not telling, it's not giving me that relief. This is called brain lock. And this is how I like to think of brain lock. This is like an easier way for me to envision it. So thought comes in, or image, like a scary image like your house is burning down, or like a crazy urge, like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, and that crazy urge to jump off. Have you ever felt that? It's crazy. Okay, so that's all. These are all intrusive thoughts, right? So it comes in, and then you feel intense fear, anxiety, like maybe I shouldn't have thought that, or oh my gosh, my house is gonna burn down, or whatnot. And then you want to relieve that, so you act compulsively, and you feel some semblance of relief, like because you think it shifted, or your brain's like You go back, and it cycles again. You have the same thought, same image again, and that's why people repeatedly do the compulsions that they demonstrate, right? So, I learned some things, actually I'll say here. I'm sitting in counseling, and my counselor explains this to me, and I'm like, this is awesome, because first of all, you totally get me, and that feels awesome. But she said, my therapist said that if you can learn how to not act, then you can actually rewire your brain. So you can change this. You can change your brain chemistry. And I'm thinking, this is amazing, what a brain. So if I can learn how to do this, like stop right there, I can change how I think, and I can be more effective in life, right? So I added some new mantras. Firstly, I forgot to tell you, I'm normal. I realize everyone does this. Everyone has intrusive thoughts. Secondly, my brain and what it thinks is not me. Thoughts are just thoughts. And lastly, I can change the way my brain works. So now, the tricky part is when you're here, how do you know? I bet you're all thinking this, actually. How do you know when you have a thought and it creates like a scary feeling that it's not a real thought? Like, that it's not something you should actually run home and check the stove or get out of bed and check the lock. How do you know? Like, that's the OCD's plight. They're laying in bed thinking, but what if it is unlocked, right? How do you know? And this is what I asked my therapist. It's like, how do I ever get to the point where I can know that I shouldn't act compulsively? And this is what I learned, the 4 R's of unlocking your brain. So here's the thing. If you are overburdened, if your brain is overburdened or over anxious, and you employ the 4 R's and it works, you know that you were experiencing an obsessive thought. I do this all the time. And honestly, as I've gone throughout the last 9 years and learned how to deal with OCD, OCD has a very specific, like anxiety has a very specific feeling, a very specific fire. I can literally feel it light my brain a little. So it's very specific, but I've learned that. But at the beginning, I had no idea. It's like, how do I know what thoughts to listen to, what thoughts not to listen to? So I'm going to share with you the 4 R's briefly, and I hope this is useful to you. This has changed my life. So the first step is to recognize the thought, but not just like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Like, you have to say, hey, OCD, you again. Like, I know what you're doing. I've seen you before. And can I tell you, I'm going to be totally honest with you. When I name it, you can name it anything. You can name it Gilbert. You can name it anything you want, anything. I name it OCD. Even if I'm just anxious, I name it OCD. I'm like, OCD, you again. One of those days, isn't it? And every time I do that, I can literally feel my brain calm down a little. So I know that I'm on the right track. Second step, you gotta relabel it. You can't just be like, hey OCD, you have to say, you're a freaking liar. Because, can I tell you the best mantra I've ever learned in my whole life? OCD is always a lie or a distortion of the truth. Always. Isn't that a relief? That's a relief. That means that if whatever your brain is telling you is a lie, so you don't even have to do it. Of course, it's hard not to do it. But you can at least recite this mantra and say, you're a lie. I know you're lying in some way. I don't know how, but I'm not going to act yet. Refocus. Secondly, and thirdly, you have to, I always give the example of the door lock, but you have to lay in bed and refocus on something else and not go check the door. Or you have to, in my case, never text that boy when you're feeling that way. And don't break up with anyone when you're anxious. And whatever you're compulsively wanting to do, don't do it. Refocus on something else. And as you do that, your brain calms down. And lastly, you repeat. Honestly, it's like OCD, I got all the time in the world. Like, I'm just gonna refocus on something else until you go away. And guess what? 10 out of 10 times, well, that's not true. Like 9 out of 10 times, my brain calms down enough that I can see the truth from the lie, and I can make a better decision. Okay, so I do this all the time, the 4 R's, and I fail like a lot still. Like, I'm not perfect at it. The best way that I employ this is I put time limits on it. So I say, if I'm on step 3, I'm like, okay, I really want to call. I think about dating. Okay. Okay, say like I'm worried that I hurt someone's feelings, right? And I'm obsessing over it, like the concept of hurting someone's feelings. Have you ever felt that way? Oh, it's the worst. So, if I felt that, what I'll tell my brain, because I can sense it's OCD, right? I'll say, okay, brain, I'll give you till 10 p.m. tonight if I'm not feeling any better. So I'm gonna focus on school and work all day. If I'm not feeling better by 10 p.m. tonight, I'll make the call and I'll apologize. And that was the key to my freedom, was just waiting a little while. And 9 out of 10 times, I don't make the call. So these are all my belief mantras. OCD is always a lie or a distortion of the truth. I added that, and every inch is a major victory. If I wait an hour to do my compulsive activity, or even 5 minutes, I'm gaining victory. And lately, in my life now, I have victory all the time. The reason I told you all this is because if you ever struggle with mental health and you know that as hard as it is, I think you think like, man, this is gonna keep me from being successful. Like, how am I ever gonna date and get married? When I was a freshman, I remember telling my counselor, this probably means I can never go on a mission, huh? Because it was so painful and so debilitating. That probably means I can't go on a mission, or I never really made like really strong plans for grad school as an undergrad, right? I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But by the end of college, I was like the happiest of kids, and I went on a mission, and I'm in grad school, and I love life, and I firmly believe that whatever mental or emotional struggle you or anyone you know is going through, I believe it has a name, and I believe there's a pattern to fix it, and I just wanted to share with you that victory story, and that was it.